it's Jonathan from Behind the Build, and I wanted to make you aware of a change. What you'll see in the title of the releases is Behind the Build AD and Behind the Build ID. Behind the Build AD is architectural design. Anything associated with architectural design will be released on Mondays. Behind the Build ID is interior design. Anything to do with interior design and its consultants will be released on Thursdays. I would ask kindly that as you hear this, if you could, to find the rating system in the format that you listen and consume Behind the Build, and please give it 5 stars. It helps us with overall engagement and visibility with a new audience. With that said, please enjoy today's episode. Welcome to Behind the Build. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and today I have with me a guest that I met a couple years ago. Went on a trip with Lutron with her.
Yep.
Came to know her a little bit and exchanged many phone calls over the last couple of years. Gone for lunch and all the rest of it. So we've kind of come to know each other. We talk about our kids. We talk about business. We talk about many things.
Yeah.
So today I've got with me Laura Stein. Laura Stein has started a practice many years ago called Laura Stein Interiors. And she's got a new initiative now that we're going to talk about as we get into the evolution of her professional career. So Laura, thanks for taking time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sorry for the long-winded intro. I just like to provide a little bit of background. So I always start things off with people and talking with them on how they have evolved both as a person and as a professional. And I like to start that with the beginning.
Okay.
The furthest recollection you have of yourself as a child. And what kind of kid were you? Were you creative?
Oh, I was the creative kid. I was the kid that always had to turn everything into an art project. So I just thought about a book report that I had to do in maybe grade 4 with The Old Man and the Sea. And I was the kid who made a paper mache fish and stuck the book report. I rolled it up like a scroll and probably dyed it with tea or something to make it look like it had been in a bottle at the bottom of the ocean for 100 years and shoved it in the mouth of the fish. That's what I did all the time.
I remember doing that with book reports. Like you had to age it and make it look like it was a pirate scroll or something.
Yep.
Do kids even do that anymore? I don't know.
No, they do everything on their computers now. It's all Google Slides.
Okay, so that's when you're 4. I should also state Laura's practice is run out of Toronto, Canada.
Yes.
As home base for where I am as well. Okay, so grade 4, and did you grow up in Toronto?
I did. I grew up in Toronto. Yeah, so I was this sort of artsy creative kid. When I was about 12 years old, my mother told me that I could redecorate my room. And so that was sort of the first big thing. And my room is the only room in the house that was color coordinated. And so this was a big deal. And I went out and I picked wallpaper and fabric, and my mom made me a duvet cover with a matching blind for my window.
What do you mean she made you?
My mom could sew. Like she was good at this stuff. She used to, when she was young, she made her own clothes and she knew how to sew. She made all our Halloween costumes. So she was very creative too. And so she made me this big Roman blind for my window that had a little peach colored frill at the bottom.
Okay.
And it matched my duvet cover, which had the same fabric on one side and the peach on the other side. And it was
all of these.
I picked everything.
Okay.
So that was kind of the beginning of it.
So sourcing was not an issue.
So no. I think that's my love of fabric and textiles, I think probably started somewhere there.
Before we get deeper into Laura's path through school and into her career, I want to pause on something she just touched on, which is how early creative instincts eventually have to live inside real systems. One place where that becomes very real very quickly is appliances. On paper, an appliance is a single decision. On site, it is part of a much larger system that affects cabinetry, ventilation, electrical, clearances, lead times, and service down the road. Kaplan's Appliances is a partner I trust because they understand that difference. They're not just helping clients pick products, they're helping teams make decisions that actually work once construction is underway. Bringing Kaplan's into the conversation early helps avoid the kind of downstream issues that can quietly derail a schedule or force compromises later. It is one of those relationships that supports both good design and smooth execution. If you want to learn more about their service offering, please feel free to connect with me, and I will introduce you to one of their team members who can understand what your needs are, what you're looking for, and situate you with a person that best suits your specific needs. Email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. Okay, let's get back to how Laura's education and early career in advertising shaped the way she thinks about design today. Okay.
And it always drove me crazy because my parents were not my parents didn't really put a lot of emphasis on our house. We had a lovely home growing up, but what it looked like, how it was decorated was not their thing. And so as I got older and as it very clearly became my thing,
Yeah.
it drove me nuts. And so I was always trying to like rearrange the furniture or find something that that was that coordinated better with the other things. And my mother used to always say, "Oh, it's fine. It matches enough. It's close enough. It's good enough for now." And it drove me crazy. So that was my childhood. And but as I grew up, I went to McGill, and then I thought I was going to be a photographer initially.
What were you studying?
I was studying film and communications
Okay.
at McGill. So it was interesting because I had wanted to go. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I would go into advertising, maybe I would be a photographer. I wanted to do something creative and artsy.
Yeah.
Interior design was not even on my radar. It was something that I didn't know anything about. I didn't really know it existed as a profession or a career.
Right. Okay.
But I knew I wanted to do something creative, and so I kind of knew that advertising was something that you could do that was creative, and photography obviously. And so I had wanted to go to Concordia to their communications program, but my family was very much very sort of academic focused, and I kind of got a bit of the lecture of, if you're going to Montreal, you're going to McGill. So off I went to McGill. And my degree is in film and communications, but it's part of the English department. So
worth noting something here,
Yeah.
sorry, is that if you're unfamiliar with McGill is also one of the top schools in Canada.
Yes.
And you need really, really above average grades to get in. Average doesn't cut it at McGill.
Yeah. So the lecture from my father was, if you have the grades to get into McGill, there's no way in hell you're going to Montreal and going to Concordia. And sorry for all those people who go to Concordia or went to Concordia because it's a great school, but that was not what my parents wanted. So once I graduated from McGill, then again, I was in this place where I didn't really know what to do. And I had this degree in communications, and at McGill, the communications department was part of the English department. So English was a very acceptable form of or field of study, whereas film for my parents really was not. So depending on who you asked, I have a degree in something different, but I didn't really know what to do with it, because what do you do with a degree in English or with a degree in film unless you're going to go into film? And I didn't really want to go into film. So the next step was, of course, with my family, you need 2 degrees to go anywhere in life. You need a master's degree. So I found a program in Boston at Boston University that was essentially the same kind of program that we had in Toronto at OCAD or at Ryerson. I really wanted to go to Ryerson, but Ryerson at that point was not a university, and now it's TMU, but back then it was still Ryerson and it was still a community college. And again, I sort of got the lecture, like, you need to have 2 degrees or you're not going to have a good career and you're not going to make enough money to do the things you want to do. So I found this program that was essentially like the ones that I wanted to do, but it was a university master's degree. So I have a master's degree in marketing communications, and I started my career in advertising. I was an art director and a graphic designer, and I worked in marketing and branding and at ad agencies. And that was where I started, and that was in Boston.
And so what were you doing at the advertising agencies? What was your role?
So I was an art director. Okay. So that meant I came up with the creative ideas for all the ad campaigns, and then was in charge of all the visuals. So all the graphic design, if we had photo shoots, if we had TV shoots, like anything that was kind of visually oriented was under my purview. And I worked with a copywriter. So we kind of worked together to come up with the concepts. That person would write the copy. I would do the visuals. So I did a lot of branding work, a lot of logos, a lot of brochures and ads, like ads for magazines and billboards and TV and all that stuff.
So, question for you on that. At the time that you were doing this, digital photography was like not there.
Nope.
Or if it was like very few people had digital.
Yeah, it was very
cameras.
new, the digital stuff. I mean, this was like the infancy of the internet. So we were doing those like banner ad sites,
right? So
that kind of thing.
So, and I say that because if you were doing these photo shoots, and I say this because if you're listening to this and all you know is digital photography, you could have potentially had someone there shooting, and there could have been something wrong. There could have sometimes have to be a reshoot.
Yep. Yep. It was all film.
Right.
Yeah. So they would shoot on film.
Yeah.
And then we would get contact sheets, which were essentially little full, 8 by 10 pages with little tiny thumbnails from all of the
negatives.
Yeah. And then we'd have to look at them through a loop, like a little magnifying glass, and decide which ones we wanted. And then they would kind of enlarge them a little bit for us to look at a little more carefully. And then from there, we would decide which one we actually wanted. And sometimes we would have to redo the whole thing.
That's what I'm saying. And,
not often, but
you didn't get a digital copy where you could bring it up on the screen on your computer and enlarge it. So I'm saying all of this just to lay the foundation for, nowadays we take for granted how simple something is, as basic as getting something shot.
Yeah.
Seeing the proofs and then suggesting which ones we like because it's digital and you can see them on the spot. Like the process
was totally different.
Completely different. It was different.
We had Photoshop. We did use Photoshop, but it wasn't the same as it is now.
Right.
Yeah, it was all very different. The way we did layouts, the way we did everything was all very different. So that was kind of where I started my career.
Yeah.
And then I moved into publishing. I actually worked for a short period at a publishing house because the advertising industry, I was living in Boston, and the advertising industry in Boston kind of tanked at one point.
Okay.
And there was a big crash. And Boston is a small market because it's very close to New York. So anything that's big is happening in New York, and Boston kind of gets the smaller regional stuff. And when there's a crash, they really suffer. So I kind of shifted gears and I worked at this publishing company, and the person there who was in charge of the photography had never art directed a photo shoot. And so he was really good at the production stuff, but got on set and didn't know what to do.
Right.
So I ended up kind of going into the photography department and started art directing all of these photo shoots for the books that we were doing.
Right.
And it was then that I started realizing that I really, really enjoyed designing things that were not just coming out on flat sheets of paper or on a flat screen, but that I was creating these sets and things in this photography studio that were dimensional and tactile, and you could interact with them. And that kind of started the wheels turning a little bit. And then I realized that I had this gigantic stack of shelter magazines at home, and that I seemed to be very obsessed with that. And finally I put 2 and 2 together, and the light bulb went off, and I went, I need to go back to school again and get another degree. And so I actually started at the New England School of Art and Design and did the first year of a master's degree in interior design there. And then my life kind of turned upside down a little bit, and I moved back to Toronto and went to George Brown. And so I didn't do a 4-year degree in interior design. I sort of got the foundation, which I think was actually really great that I did that foundational year of the master's degree. But then I went to George Brown. I realized that I didn't want to do commercial design. I wanted to do residential, and to do another 4-year degree in interior design when I didn't have any interest in doing the commercial side just seemed like overkill at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I was back in Toronto. I had done all this work kind of styling and working on photography, and I ended up getting a job with a production company that did some shows for HGTV. So this was kind of my step into the industry because I had this experience on set, and then I really wanted the interior design side. So this worked out really nicely because I hadn't really lived here since I had graduated from high school. So I didn't know the city in terms of, where the furniture stores
Right.
were, who do you talk to if you want to get your house painted? Like, I just didn't know any of this stuff. I had no industry
How long had
knowledge.
you been gone for? Like 10 years?
I was in Boston for almost 10 years, and I was at
Okay.
McGill before that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I left when I was, I guess 18, 19, and I moved back when I was 32.
Okay.
So,
So it's like that. That changes a lot, especially in that at that time frame, because the city was Toronto was just growing,
yeah.
growing.
Yeah, I mean, everything was new. I knew where to go to a movie or
Yeah.
like do the kinds of things that I did when I was in
Yeah.
high school, but I didn't know, I never lived in Toronto as an adult. So I had to kind of relearn the city from a new perspective. And working on the HGTV shows, I worked on two of them, and it was probably like the best and worst experience I ever had for a lot of different reasons. But what it did do was it kind of showed me the city, and I learned,
Right.
where to go, where the resources were, who to talk to, where the showrooms were. So that was great. So I got that experience under my belt, and then I was doing night classes at George Brown, and then I just kind of jumped in, and I made the decision because I had just moved back from Boston. I moved back into my parents' house,
Yeah.
and
You
so
have to.
yeah, that was like I just gotten divorced. It was just I moved into my parents' house, so my expenses were my phone and like gas for my car, and so I thought, if I'm ever going to start a business, now's the time because I don't have a mortgage, I don't have kids, I don't really have anything that,
That's tying you down, and then you're responsible
and
to.
that
Yeah.
exactly, I
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about it.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, now's the time. I'm just going to jump in and figure it out.
Did you have at this point? Did you have anyone that you had met in Boston that you could use as a source of like mentorship or to call and bounce ideas off of, or did you have anyone like that
Not
here?
really. No. I
So
mean, I had done some freelance work in Boston.
okay.
So I had done a few jobs in Boston. I had done my own house in Boston, two houses actually in Boston that were mine. And so when I moved back here, I didn't really know anyone. It was all very new, and I was just kind of figuring it out as I went.
Okay.
So
Which is hard, right? Like I just see it from the standpoint of some people can get into this industry, and as they evolve in the industry, they'll work at practices and gain that tutelage and the mentorship, and they have that sounding board for what they want to go through. And it sounds to me like
I
you're just going and figuring it out like
I
guerrilla style.
did. Yeah. It was it was totally guerrilla style. I literally like had no idea what I knew how to design because I had been designing things, I mean, literally since I was 12 and I did my own bedroom.
Right.
I had been designing things my whole life. So I understood all of the principles of design.
Right.
I had to learn how to apply them in this industry. And then I had to learn how the industry works. So I did this stuff at George Brown. I did this course with Kimberly Seldon, who is a designer in Toronto, who now has a program called Business of Design still. But she was the one who literally taught me, what a purchase order is, how to set up my filing system. So very, very early on, that was very helpful to kind of go through her program to learn how to do some of those things. But I had no idea. I mean, I literally was figuring it out as I was going.
What were initially when you were starting this? What were the biggest challenges that were really impeding you from being able to feel like you were seeing movement early on?
I think firstly, it's always the question is how on earth do I get clients?
Yeah.
And when you're starting and you don't have a portfolio and you don't really have something to show, it's even harder because, you're just hanging up a shingle and saying, I'm here, but, it's hard to get that momentum. I was very lucky because I had this background in marketing. So I knew how to design my own logo. I knew how to build my own website. I knew how to kind of create things. I knew how to create kind of a fake portfolio to show it wasn't fake. It was still my work, but it was not real projects. But I knew how to do that because I had been doing that for years in the other industry. Like when I started in that industry, I also had to, make up ads and do that sort of thing to get hired. So I understood how that piece worked. I think for me, the hardest piece was really figuring out, initially, was figuring out how do I get something from a concept into reality in someone's home, and what are all the steps and all the little pieces of the puzzle that have to come together to make that happen, because they don't really teach you that very well in school.
Right.
And what I was taught in school, very quickly I realized like it just was not applicable in the real world. Like we learned how to make these very beautiful presentation boards, and I was taking little pieces of foam core and wrapping them in fabric and hot gluing them to this board and labeling it all so it was all pretty and it looked beautiful. And maybe for a presentation in front of a board of directors that might have been something that would have worked.
Yeah.
But I remember, so my very first, maybe she was my second client, I did this because this is what I learned how to do, and I made this beautiful board for her,
You were so
and
proud
I
of
was
it.
so proud of it. And
How long did it take to make?
oh God,
Estimate.
hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an arts and crafts project, really, like, and hours just gluing things and wrapping the foam core so it was perfect, and the X-Acto knife and all that stuff. And I put it out in front of her, and her immediate reaction was, "That's lovely, but how much am I paying you to do arts and crafts?" And that was the first and last time I put one of those boards in front of a client because, like, it just didn't. I had no idea. I had no idea. And so I started this business literally in my little brother's old bedroom.
Yep.
Because I was living in my parents' house, and at his desk where he had done his homework, that's where I was working, and I had my T-square and my pencil, and that's what I was doing. And eventually I was able to move out of my parents' house, thank goodness. But, I got I worked from home for probably the first 4 years or so until I got an office.
Yep.
And I had put this is a story that I like to tell, but I mean, I didn't have a partner who worked on Bay Street. I didn't have, a partner who was a doctor or a lawyer or somebody who was bringing in money. It was me. Like it was all on me. So as soon as I was out of my parents' house, it was like, can I swear? I was like, oh shit, I have to be responsible for this. And so I just took this big marker, this big Sharpie, and wrote on a piece of paper that said failure is not an option. And I just stuck it up above, like on the bulletin board above my desk. And I looked at that every single day, and I worked my butt off to make sure that failure would not happen because it was just all on me. And so eventually I hired someone. I got busy enough and I was able to hire someone part-time, and she was coming to my condo.
Okay.
And we started her at 9:30 instead of 9 because I had to make sure that at that point then I did have a partner, that he was like dressed and not walking around the house in his underwear when she got there. So, she started part-time as an assistant, and then a few years later we moved into office space. And
what were like the first projects? What do they look like? Were they renovations?
So the
Were
very
they
first
homes?
project I did was the renovation of like an attic bedroom
Okay.
in a little house that belonged to one of my mom's colleagues. And then the second one I did was like a whole first floor. This was the one where I gave her the arts and crafts project. But that was a kitchen reno, and we did her living room and the powder room and a bunch of other things. I think the dining room too, like
So-
like the main floor.
So at this time as well, were you working on digital plans in CAD, or was there hand drawing as well?
The
What did
early
that look like?
ones were hand drawn,
Okay.
and I never liked drawing by hand because I'm a lefty, and I would always smudge everything.
You and I both.
Yeah, and I never learned
Pencil, God.
I never learned how to do it. Like some people have that hook with their hand where they
Yeah.
can like not smudge. I was never
Yeah,
able to
and
do that.
where's Ned Flanders' Leftorium?
I
And
know,
I had
right?
never
It
seen that.
never.
Saw that on Simpsons. I was like, oh, so
There
the
was
writers
this
get me.
There was this thing, a smudge guard that you could like put down
I
and
remember,
move along with your hand.
I remember that.
Like, yeah, you can't use that stuff. Anyway, so I started taking classes, and this will tell you how, how long ago it was, but AutoCAD was not part of the curriculum
Yeah.
when I took the course at George Brown. So I had to go and like do a whole other course
Was it a
in
night
AutoCAD.
class or what?
Yeah, it was like a night class,
Yeah.
and I took I can't remember. I think there were 3 levels, so I had to go and like learn how to use AutoCAD as a separate thing.
I want to touch on this again. So again, if you're listening to this right now, and you're of an age where you had the opportunity to be able to learn this as a part of school, and you're entering the workplace, and working 40 hours a week is a little bit excessive, you have to understand and appreciate that the people who have helped build that business that you're now working at have literally put in all of those extra hours to figure out how to use software that was completely new. Like completely new. And they have put in their licks in trying to establish the business. They have ground out every iota of energy they have to be able to sit in front of people, lose projects, live with their parents, struggle to pay rent, debate what they're going to eat. And then they have some young people that come in and say, working 40 hours a week is going to be really hard for me. Can I split that up, or can I not only do 38? I'm saying all this because you got to understand, you want to be successful in this business, you got to work.
You do.
And 40 hours a week, you're not working enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, I don't even know how many hours a week I was working. And,
Night school. I mean,
I was doing night school. I was working all day. I was working all night.
Right.
I mean, I would go to bed at 1:00 in the morning. I would eat popcorn for dinner. It was like, it was
We're
crazy.
talking about how this morning, like I was in my computer 10 to 6,
Yeah.
Yeah. You still got to do it.
Yeah.
So okay. So I look, I guess I'm kind of saying all of this because we'll get there where your career has continued to evolve. I guess what I'm trying to allude to here is that the work ethic that you put in, you will get as much out of it as you put in.
100%.
When you are doing it in the right type of environment and for the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a young staff member a few years ago who asked me if she could work from home, and she was a junior designer, and she actually was a fantastic designer, but she was green. Like she just didn't have the experience. And I knew, like, give this girl 5 years, she's going to, blow everyone out of the water. But she needed that time to get in. And she asked me if she could work from home. And I said, no. And she was not happy. But I said, there's no way you're going to learn what you need to learn if you are not here. And if you're not in the studio and you're not listening to the conversations that I'm having with, the people who are more senior than you, if you're not seeing what I'm doing, even if it's not something that's assigned specifically to you, you have to be here to learn and absorb.
Be the sponge.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I have been called old by my staff because, I think there is maybe a generational ideology that's a little different with that kind of thing. But I truly believe that when you're doing something like design that we do, and there's so many aspects. I mean, this industry it's one of the most complex industries. There's so many moving parts. We're a service-based industry, we're a retail-based industry, we do construction stuff. Like there's so many things you have to know and that you have to become an expert at and that you have to coordinate, that either you got to do what I did and spend every waking minute figuring it out, or you have to learn it from someone and you have to be there and be present. Mm-hmm. So you can't just kind of half-ass it and expect to do well. Because your talent will take you a certain distance, but it won't take you all the way to where you want to go.
Okay, so the projects are some reno-based projects. That's what we were
Oh
establishing.
yeah.
Okay,
So
and yeah, I gotta remember where we were.
yep.
So we were
Traveling back in time.
yeah. So reno-based projects, the evolution is happening. You've moved out on your own, and you're getting to the point now where you're paying rent. You can start going out for some meals because
Yep.
things are a little bit better than what they were.
Yep.
And what does it look like? And do you recall what it was like the first time you pitched a new house?
A little bit terrifying. Um,
Okay.
I definitely had imposter syndrome for a long time. I think I was in the fake it till you make it mode for a long time, but in retrospect, I probably wasn't, but while I was in it, that's how I felt. Yeah, and then but I knew I was a good designer. And I knew that I could do whatever was thrown at me. I just had to figure it out, and that's what I did. I just figured it out, and if it was something I didn't know how to do, I learned very early on that people like my trade showrooms were amazing partners, that the builders I was working with were amazing partners, and they were people who I could learn from, and that I had to ask questions and just learn all the things that I needed to learn to be able to do what I wanted to do and to move forward to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so I tried to just establish as many relationships as I could and work as closely as I could with people who were more experienced than I was so that I could learn from them.
Hmm. I'm curious to know this. How do you establish, and I'm not asking you what the number is, but how did you establish what you should charge for your services? Because that's a hard thing to be able
It is a
to
very
to
hard
determine.
thing. And it's one of the things that is a continuous ongoing conversation, probably for every designer at every level
Yeah, across the board.
across the board.
Us as a builder, we struggle with that stuff all the
Yeah,
time.
it's always questioning, and then when you have an economy like this where things are a little slower, then people are thinking, "Oh, are my rates too high?" I mean, it's always a question. I asked people. I
Okay.
joined. It's now the I'm going to get it wrong. Either Decorators and Designers or Designers and Decorators Association of Canada, the DDA.
Yeah.
It was back at the time called SEDECA, which was the Canadian Decorators Association, and so
Okay.
I joined that group.
Yeah.
And for probably year like 1 to 5, it was really, really helpful because I got to interact with people who had been in business for a lot longer than me, who are a generation ahead of me. I learned what they were doing. I learned some of the things I liked they were doing, some of the things I didn't like that they were doing. I also tried to talk to other people who had worked with designers, like
Right.
my aunts and uncles, my parents' friends, like all the people kind of who I met who were around me in my life, and the ones who had worked with designers, and what was good, what didn't work, what were the problems, what did they charge you, and so I think just talking to people and just trying to understand what was out there, I slowly figured it out, and then I became friends with other designers who were kind of at the same level as I was, and we would have conversations about this and, are we kind of in the same place? Okay, yeah.
Right.
It's, use that as a gauge.
Right.
I still do that.
Speak to others.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Draw on the network.
yeah.
And I say that because, like, if again, if going back to what you said at the beginning, was that you didn't have that mentor. So how did you establish it? And so joining a network,
Yep.
or finding someone that could potentially be there to
Yeah.
offer you that advice would be really helpful. Consultants, etc. Okay.
I
So,
did have some I did like, to be fair, I did work with some business coaches over the
oh, you
years,
did. Okay.
but I wouldn't call them mentors, and that to me,
No,
like,
that's
there's a
okay.
difference. Like, they were more, even though they were interior design focused,
Yeah.
they were more like, "This is my system, you implement it this way, and, then you will get that result." And it never felt quite right to me because it was always sort of a one size fits all system that they just had established, and it didn't necessarily fit my goals or my
Right.
values. But I always got some nuggets from them, for sure. And so, and because they were working with other designers, they had a sense too of, what do people charge or what. what is kind of the average rate, or how does it all work? I mean, everybody charges. You talk to 15 different designers, you're going to get 15 different billing models. So it's hard to compare apples to apples with pricing.
Right. And what about in terms of the software that you're using at the time, and how you would maximize what you could get out of that to provide clients with what they could perceive to be the value, which they don't totally understand, but would actually be very valuable for builders on site? How did you establish what that would look like for yourself and for the practice? Did you look at what different options were available? Like what, how did you play?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned like AutoCAD was the thing that I had to know.
Mm-hmm.
And that hand drawings were not going to cut it. Like if I very early on, I was like, I want to play with the big boys. I want to, I'm going to the major leagues here. And if I'm going to play in the major leagues, my smudged hand drawings with my left hand are not going to get me there. So I have to learn AutoCAD. The next thing probably would have been Revit, but at some point I just, I was like, we'll talk. Yeah, it's enough. But yeah, so I think just from being in the community and just putting myself out there and talking to people, what do you use? What's working? What's not working? I think, the first Canadian customer for a software that is now called Studio Designer that many, many, many designers use, which is kind of like a project management software combined with an accounting software. It's like QuickBooks combined with project management. And it's specifically built for the design industry. But I actually helped them build out the Canadian version of it so that, GST and HST were incorporated in the way our tax system works and how it's different in each province.
Right.
And it's, I think, the biggest one. There's several softwares like that, but I think this is the biggest one. So
Sorry, go ahead.
how did I find it?
No, go ahead. Finish your.
Yeah, no.
I'll
So,
get
so
there.
that was like a very helpful piece of software to work with
Yeah.
because it really, really, and it still does. Like I still use it. It keeps all of my projects very organized.
Right.
It keeps all of like there was no accounting done in Excel. Like there was no spreadsheets. Maybe there was at the very beginning, the first few years before I found this thing,
Right.
but there were no spreadsheets, no manual invoices. Like everything was all systematized. I am the queen of processes and systems. And so I knew like I had to get all that stuff figured out. It's constantly evolving, but I had to get that all figured out very early on because otherwise it's too much to manage and there's so many potentials for mistakes. So that helps.
You repeated the question I was about to ask you, which we'll go to now, and that was, how did you find, or how did they find you? How did that
I found them, and I honestly don't remember exactly how, but I was tapped into like all the industry publications, magazines, TV shows, although I don't think it was a TV show, and the professional associations. Like I was paying attention, so I probably saw something about it somewhere, looked into it and went, oh, this is amazing. And then it was like, oh, it's only in the US. I'm like, okay, well, let's get it here. And I remember having, phone calls with the owner trying to explain to him how our tax system works and how, we collect tax and then we have to, pay it, but then we can also deduct things from it. And that was a bit confusing for them initially. But yeah, it was all just making connections in the industry.
And so what did it look like when you were running your practice early on? I know initially you were saying it was you, and then you brought in.
Yeah, I brought
help.
in an assistant to.
Well, yeah. What did they do?
So she was part-time. She was actually still a student, but she had worked for another designer for about 3 years. So she actually knew, she knew some stuff.
Yep.
And she was very talented. So she started. Actually, she was not my first employee. You want a funny story?
Yeah.
Okay. So the very first employee I hired, and I had no clue what I was doing, but I belonged to this like women's networking group. And there was someone who was a business coach there. And she had said to me, when you make your first hire or when you hire anyone, you are not hiring your next best friend. You need to hire the right person to fit the role. So I thought, okay, that seems like good advice. Mm-hmm. So I went through interviews and I did this whole thing and I hired this person. And it was an administrative role. Like I needed help with the billing. I needed help with the ordering. It was all admin. There was no design. So I wanted an admin person. And she came in. She couldn't get the name of my business right when she answered the phone. And I had to put a business card in front of her. So she would say, "It's Laura Stein Design." I'm like, "No, that rhymes. It's not Laura Stein Design. There's a reason for that." And then we did this photo shoot. It was actually a TV shoot at a client's house for a Christmas, like how to decorate for the holidays thing. And she came and she helped me set it all up. And when we were done, we had to clean up. And I said to her, "Okay, at the end of, like, by the time we leave, we have to make sure that this house looks better. Like, the only way that they know that we were here is that we left them a gift on their kitchen counter,
Right.
but it's got to look better than it did when we got here." And so we, packed up the cars. We had all this stuff that we had been styling with, and we packed it all back up. I sent her away to go return some things. I did the same thing, came back, and then, like, thank goodness I had to use the washroom. So I go into their powder room, and my clients are away on vacation. They're coming home that night. And I go into their bathroom and I lift the toilet seat lid, and it is full of mud, like potting soil with the little white,
Yeah.
things in it. So we had these, I don't remember, like poinsettias or something, that had clearly spilled. And rather than cleaning it up and putting it in the garbage bag that was there, she dumped all of the potting soil into the toilet.
Yeah.
And so
Good for her.
now, and it's like, you can't flush it at this point because it is so full of soil. It would have totally clogged the toilet.
Yeah.
So there I am in my client's house trying to figure out what to do. And I have to like scoop this mud out of the toilet with my hands.
And again, this goes back to what I said before.
So
40-hour work weeks.
yeah. So she didn't last very long.
Yeah.
That was the end of her. But my real first employee, she was still a student, and she was fantastic, and she was very talented. And she worked for me for, I don't even know how many years, but a number of years. She went from being part-time to full-time. And I actually, at that point I was so naive. I was like, she's going to be with me forever. But she wasn't, unfortunately. And she started doing admin stuff, and then started helping me, like, doing some design work and some sourcing. And so she kind of slowly became the all around, right hand person to do everything. And then we realized, okay, her talent and her interest really was in design. And so then I sort of shifted her over to do just design work, and brought in somebody else to do all of the admin stuff.
Okay.
And procurement, ordering, and all of that stuff. So for a long time, there were really just three of us, and those roles shifted. There were different people in those positions for a while, but then we grew to 5 and then to 7 people. And that's kind of where I felt like it was a good size for me. Yeah. And so we were there for a long time.
And when you had 7 people, what did the projects look like? Scale?
So we were doing much bigger. We were doing fewer but bigger projects, which is where I had wanted to go. And
more detailing.
Yeah, a lot more detailing. I mean, some of the projects, one house could have been like 10 of the projects I had earlier in my career, just because of the number of rooms. But we were doing very large scale renovations, like gut renos, whole home decorating, furniture, decor, everything, new construction. So it was fewer but much larger projects, and the projects would last between, a short one would be a year, and some of them, I think the longest one I had was about 5 years.
A 5-year project.
Yeah.
It's a serious project.
It was, I mean, it was the biggest project I had. It was about a 20,000 square foot house.
Right. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to build.
Yeah, and so it's, just the whole design phase for that was a number of years, and the pre-construction's a long time. And
okay, so the practice evolves to the point where you've had as many as 7 people and 20,000 square foot homes. And so what does it look like as you move forward from that, and as you continue to evolve as a professional?
Yeah, so that's where things start to get interesting, because probably about I want to say maybe 2.5 years ago or so, I was having a conversation with a colleague who's known me for a very long time. And I just was like, I don't know, something's off. It's not working. I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying it. I don't know what's going on. And she kind of looked me in the eye and said, I don't think you want to do this anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? And of course I want to do this. And what else would I want to do? And I love design. And I don't know what else I could do. I've been doing this for, this is all I've been doing for the last 20 years. Of course I want to still do this. But I heard her voice in my ear for a long time. And I started thinking and paying attention to it. And for a while I ignored it. And for a while I was just like, whatever, I'm going through a funk. I'm tired. I don't what. But I started thinking about it, and I started paying attention to what was going on in my office and paying attention to what was going on with me, and realized the universe was sending me some signals, and that we would be getting these phone calls, for these projects that were like dream projects, massive new construction projects, great budget, nice people. And on the outside, I was like, yes, this is exactly the kind of work I want to be doing. And on the inside, I was like, oh my God, I really don't want to do this. And I had been ignoring that like pit of my stomach voice for a long time. And I was
Right.
probably self-sabotaging a little bit. And I finally started paying attention, and I realized that it took like a year and a half of soul searching and of like figuring out what was happening. But I realized that I love design. That hasn't changed. I love design, and I love running my business. I love being an entrepreneur. I love the excitement of like new things and growing, but I really don't like running projects, and it took me a long time to get there. and
Interesting.
and
Okay.
and even, when I had a team of 7, I was not the one running the projects. It was not me involved in the day-to-day stuff.
Laura just made a really important point about how different it is to design something versus actually getting it built, and how much of this industry lives in that gap. The doors sits right in the middle of that gap. They're simple in concept, but incredibly demanding in execution. The same applies for windows, opening sizes, hardware prep, swing direction, thresholds, insulation values, and how everything ties into trim, drywall, and exterior cladding. The doors is a partner I respect because they understand that the doors and windows are not just last minute finishes. They are early technical decision that has a ripple effect across the entire project. When the doors and windows are properly specified and coordinated early, installs go smoother, details line up, and you avoid the kind of site fixes that nobody enjoys dealing with once things are moving fast. We work with them on a great deal of our projects, and they execute at the highest level. If you want to learn more about the company, feel free to email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca, and I'm happy to connect you with them. But with that in mind, I want to come back to how Laura started realizing that the execution side of projects was no longer what energized her. When you say running the project, what do you mean by that?
I mean by the execution part. I love the designing part. I love the creative problem solving.
Okay.
I love working with all the finishes and the textiles, but then kind of taking the concept and making it into reality, that whole process, which is a massive part of what we do.
Yeah.
I just don't enjoy it. I realized this is not lighting me up anymore.
Right.
And even more than not lighting me up, it's really kind of dragging me down. And I would say it's that part of the process is really, that's like 70% of the project.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of realized, like, I started this business when I was 32 years old. And I had, my life was a certain way, and I had dreams and big ideas and big plans, and I actually reached a lot of them. I won all sorts of awards. I built my business to the size I wanted it to be. I was making good money and getting published and like doing all the things. Travel, I was, Paris and Milan, like all those things. It was amazing. But I built this business on the hopes and dreams and goals of a 30 something. And I am now a 20 years later, do the math something. And my life is very different. Like, as a, I'm in my 50s. My life is totally, totally different. I didn't have a family then. I have a family now. I'm a different person. And what I want out of my life and my day to day is very different than it was then. And so I sort of then started thinking, okay, well, now what? What do I do? Because I could just keep doing what I'm doing and kind of, not be that thrilled with it. But, I worked so hard to get here. It's very, very hard for me to walk away from that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, it's not serving me. So now what? Like, I want to stay in this industry. I love this industry, but what else can I do? And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, wait a minute. I have been doing this for 20 years. Like, I kind of know some stuff. I now have this wisdom that I did not have when I started. And really, the whole reason I started my business was because I wanted to take the knowledge and talent that I had and use it to be able to help people in some way.
Yeah, I get that completely.
And, so when I started thinking about it, I was like, well, now I have this new set of knowledge after 20 years. Maybe I can use that to help people. And
go find the next you as a youth.
Yeah, exactly.
And provide them with some experience.
And so I started by like, okay, well, what's the low hanging fruit? And for me, that whole thing of like done is better than perfect, that never worked for me. So there really is no low hanging fruit. But because I was like the queen of processes and systems and stuff, I had all of these things and these templates. And because I used to be an art director and graphic designer, and they were all very beautifully designed, and I thought, well, I can take my own branding out of it.
Yep.
And put them up online. And that's something I could actually like offer to people to sell, so that they could have, access to, what I did, because we always want to know what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And then, then they also have this sort of beautifully designed, it's all written. So they've got sort of all these process templates that they can use for the course of their project. And as I started working on that, it really evolved, and it became something much bigger, and became something where I sort of decided I really want to put my focus on helping other people really build their business, but in a different way than the people who sort of I encountered along the way. Because as we talked about before, I really didn't have a mentor. I never had someone who took me under their wing, who kind of encouraged me to grow in a way that worked for me.
Or that called you and checked in and said,
or that called me and checked in and just said like, how are things? Do you need any help? Like, I never had a mentor. And the business coaches that I worked with, I felt like they kind of put everything into a silo. Like, all the creative stuff is over here in one silo, and then your business is over here in this other silo. And, everyone who starts an interior design business starts it because they love design. They're creative people. And so that never worked for me. Like, it really didn't work for me. And I am a Gemini, like right brain, left brain. I've got them both going on at the same time. And they need to be aligned, and they need to be interconnected. And so I realized the thing that always got me to the next level, like when I threw my business together, I didn't know what I was doing, and it was very scrappy. And I think a lot of people do that, and they're working kind of in a reactive way rather than a proactive way. And then they get to a point where they've gotten as far as they can go with what they've built, because to level up, to get that next level of client.
And what does that look like as the
like,
next level of client, right?
Right. Like, how do you get, I've gotten from A to B. Now, how do I get from B to C to D to E? Like, how do I get up and keep leveling up? And in hindsight, like, what I realized when I look back, every time I kind of hit that ceiling, and the way that I was able to break through that ceiling was by elevating my, like, very thoughtfully elevating my design work, elevating my processes, and therefore my client experience. And by client experience, I don't mean like sending them flowers or out for a nice dinner, which is part of it, but how you take them through the project and how they feel as they're going through the project is what I mean by client experience.
Right.
Like the trust, the security, the feeling of being cared for, the feeling of excitement, and knowing how to manage and how to create those feelings at the right time, because there's projects are roller coasters at the beginning.
100%.
They're very, very excited,
Peaks and valleys,
and then there's the opportunity where they can get concerned or frustrated or nervous.
timelines, budget,
Right. And you have to be able to control all those things and control their emotions so that they don't start losing trust, and they don't start getting frustrated, and they don't start getting stressed out or worried.
We were just talking about how projects are a series of peaks and valleys, and how managing that experience is just as important as the final result. That becomes even more true when a project includes something like a pool. A pool is not just an add-on. It is structure, engineering, drainage, waterproofing, equipment, landscape coordination, and long-term maintenance. Aquanta Pools is a partner I like because they approach pools as a part of the overall project, not as a separate feature. Their focus is on integration, performance, and making sure the pool actually supports the way the home is meant to be lived in. When Aquanta is involved early, the process is calmer, coordination is tighter, and the end result feels intentional rather than forced. Plus, they look after all the permitting, which makes the whole process so much smoother. If you want to learn more, email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. For now, let's get back to how all of this thinking ultimately led Laura to create LSI Workshop and rethink what she wanted the next phase of her career to look like.
And that's really the experience, because if they can sail through that, that's how you get referrals. Like that's where they say, yeah, my living room is beautiful, but we had such a great experience working with her. That's where the experience comes. So elevate, like being very purposeful about thinking about what am I doing and how can I make that better. And then the third thing was my branding. Like, so those three things, and the branding is not just like making my logo nicer or updating my website, but really like, who am I talking to?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the right
target
is
market?
Is it the right target market? And am I delivering the right message to the right people in the right way, so that I'm standing out from my competition and so that it's resonating with them? Like, is it making them feel what they need to feel in order to make that first phone call to me? And then am I continuing that, once they've made that call, am I just sending them some like bad email, or am I continuing with building that trust and growing? And so every time I kind of leveled up those three things together, my business jumped. And so that's kind of the backbone that I've built what I'm doing now on. So
which is
called LSI Workshop. So it's a new business. So LSI is Laura Stein Interiors, and then so it's LSI Workshop. And it's a new business that I launched about 10 weeks ago. It's very new.
So this is just to confirm, because timing between when we record and
Yeah.
when it's released will be different.
So
this is what month? This is August of 2025.
August of 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, right in the middle of the summer when everyone is paying attention. Best time to launch something.
No, but I mean, look, it also gives you an opportunity to be able to work on developing some
Yeah.
of those and honing in on some of the messaging.
Yeah. So it took me a year to sort of put everything together.
Yeah.
And build out the website and kind of create the programs. So what we're doing is really focusing on building the foundation of the business with design work, with client experience, and with brand, because those are the three things that I've realized the more thought I've put into this. And as I was kind of thinking through my journey, those are the things that every time I strengthened them, I aligned them and elevated them, my business jumped. My business, got to the next level, and I was able to go where I wanted to go because I had structured something that could hold that growth. Because I think a lot of people grow, but they they just get more projects, or they're trying to get more projects, or they can't figure out how, and then they don't have the systems underneath them to support it. But I also really, really wanted to stay focused on creativity,
Okay.
because that is really, like I said before, that's why we're all here. That's why we started these businesses in the first place.
Yep.
And so it's really focusing on taking the creative work and looking at it in a strategic way. So it's not just in its own silo,
Right.
but it's combined. Like, I have this vision of, gears or clockworks, where everything's kind of combined and one thing turns and it makes the other one turn, and they all work together so that it's helping you build that foundation so that you can take your business where you want to. So
Yeah.
really focused on your own goals, your own values, who you are as a designer, why you're doing this in the first place as a creative, and then embracing that and using it in a strategic way. And so that kind of led from building out those templates to creating a mentorship program, because I realized, like, if I had had someone who had been there in that way for me along the way, I could have
Help.
saved a lot of those late night hours
Right.
and yeah, and save me from that cycle of like overwhelm and then burnout, and then like working my butt off, not knowing what I was doing, trying to figure it all out, and then overwhelm and burnout. And then, so I'm hoping that I can be there for other people to be able to, help them avoid that and to grow their business in a way that works well for them, not just in the like, here's my system, you must implement it to see the results. It's
Right.
really kind of working with them
Kind
on
of
what they need.
customized.
Yeah. And then kind of the third pillar of what we're doing is branding, because it all kind of ties in together, and I have that background in marketing. So the idea is, if you've got some of these templates and you want to personalize them, if you have a great brand logo and all that stuff already, you can just pop them in there. It's
Right.
all their Canva templates. So you can kind of customize it as much as you want or as little as you want. Everything's already there, and you can just put in your own logo, photos, project info, whatever, and
Right.
you're good to go.
Right.
Or you can change it. But kind of once we've gone through some of the mentoring stuff, it might be time to look at, like, do we need to elevate your branding? And so then we're looking at that. And I do some of it myself, but I have partners that I work with who can do copywriting, who do design. This is from, all the people that I have worked with in the past in all my different industries,
Right.
who are, experts, who have been doing logo design, who have been doing copywriting, who, for many, many years. So I have some really nice partnerships to support that. But all of the design stuff is basically me. So we have the templates, the branding, and then mentorship programs. I'm doing some one-on-one, and then I have a mentorship, like a group mentorship program, which is really kind of the flagship piece of it, where we kind of go through this program together. It's a small group. Yeah. And we'll be launching another one in probably early winter 2026, because I can only do so many at a time. And I'm
Yeah.
working on turning that actually into a digital course, so that people can, it's not dependent on me actually
Yeah.
showing up. And if they want to just do it on their own timing, that they'll have, all the videos and downloads and things
Right.
that they can do it themselves. And then I think, the upgrade would be to be doing it one-on-one with me. But that's not done yet. I'm hoping that will be early in 2026.
Very exciting.
And I have all sorts of other ideas of things that we can do, of just lots of different stuff. So yeah, it's been very exciting and energizing.
And are you still, while you started this initiative, are you still maintaining?
Yep, still doing so. Yeah, so Laura Stein Interiors still exists.
Yeah.
I have definitely scaled it back.
Yeah.
Um,
As you would if you're going to be doing something different.
yeah. I've scaled it back. I sort of made the decision that I'm only going to work on projects that get me excited.
Yeah.
So if the phone rings and I have that feeling in the pit of my stomach, I don't need that project. My team is all remote now.
Yeah.
I
like us.
closed my studio, which was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
It's just physical space.
I know, but I put so much energy and love and money into renovating it, and then within not very long I closed it down. But it was it was the right thing. And
we did the same thing.
yeah.
Okay, we spent a couple months renovating our office. It was 2019. We moved back in just before our holiday shutdown. I get these memory pictures on my phone
Yeah.
of the completion of the office, and it was really nice. And we used it a couple times,
That was
a couple
a couple
times,
times.
and then literally the pandemic hit, and we were like, well,
Oh, see, I don't even have the pandemic excuse because
but
I had a great office on Mount Pleasant, and my sign is thankfully still there, which is nice. But I moved. We grew out of that space. It was a lovely space, but we grew out of it, and I moved to the other side of the city, and so it was a very long commute for me.
right,
And so then I got an office space in the Castlefield design
nice
area,
walk, yeah.
and yeah, renovated it, and we were there for about 3 years, and that's it. And it was such a great space, but yeah, it was kind of it just was that like that moment where I realized like this is what I have to do. So
Yeah. It's the right decision.
Yeah.
Because it also led you to be able to go and do this and
Yeah.
not feel the burden of having to cover the cost of office space,
Well, that was it too, right? Like the
subleasing, all of that stuff. Like, forget it.
yeah.
Focus on the things that and this sounds very much like that's exactly what you're doing, is focusing on the things that you're willing to want to put your energy into at this
Yeah,
stage,
exactly.
that are going to actually provide you with a greater sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. And I feel, I'm very proud of Laura Stein Interiors. Like I'm very proud of that business that
Yeah.
I built. But I recognize that it was time to move on to something else. It took me a long time to get to that place where I could recognize it. But now I realize like it was just time to do something else and to put my energy towards something that made me feel good about it again.
Yeah.
And to really be able to help people, because I sort of felt like that got lost somewhere along the way in what I was doing. That energy became more about creating the best design, or like making sure we have all the details in place and creating this experience for our clients, but not really like, I don't know, that feeling that I wanted to be there just somehow got lost. And so I feel like this definitely is much more aligned with who I am now, where I am now in my life, what I want to be doing. Like I want to be at home at the end of the day when my son comes home from school.
Yeah.
I like that he can, just walk into the room where I am and tell me about his day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which he couldn't do before.
Right.
And
because you could go to a sales meeting. Your sales meeting could be 7 o'clock, right? To go meet someone new.
it was, yeah. I mean, there were so many things, or I was at the office and couldn't get home on time. And, my priorities have changed. And so it's really been a good shift. And so now I am just working on building it out, getting momentum, getting the word out there, Instagram. And I have to say, I am not an Instagram expert, but I am trying to become one, writing newsletters and doing all the things to kind of grow and build my audience and just get people to know that I'm here and I'm available and that this exists.
Yeah. Well, so if you're out there and you're in design and you're wondering, can I improve upon my business? I mean, I would say it's worth connecting with Laura, see whether or not there's a fit there, and you're going to be able to draw upon a ton of a couple decades worth of experience.
Yep.
And if you've heard all of this, like Laura's a pleasure, and she's got a lot. She's got a lot to be able to offer. So. With all of that said, Laura, I really appreciate you taking time to do this, to sit down with me, and to be able to have a different type of conversation this time around.
Yeah.
It's great, and I hope that if you've been listening, that you've enjoyed it. I would also recommend that if you've been listening, check the liner notes in wherever you are listening, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever it is. At the bottom in the liner notes, you'll have access to Laura's website. You'll be able to see that. And if you want to connect with her, you can do it through there.
Great. Yeah.
So, thanks again, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.